proof is a revolutionary act. And now, The David Knight Show.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
That's right. It was 77 years ago. I'm David Knight on this December 7th, 2018. Not too many people are talking about that anymore. Isn't that interesting? You know, we had, as I mentioned, when everybody, this whole week, they've been dragging George H.W. Bush's body around the country like it was Weekend with Bernie's. And I'm basically sick of it. By the middle of the week, I said, this guy trashed Americans and America first on the 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And I read you some of his comments. I won't go over all of them again, but just this is the bottom line. This is the transcript put out by Navy.mil. The military put this out. The Navy would do it because he was speaking there at the USS Arizona Memorial, where some of the greatest loss of life was. And here's the title. Isolationism spawned World War II. They said the unsought war, it's been called. And then George Bush, on the 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, said isolationists gathered together at what was known in those days as an America First rally in Pittsburgh at precisely the time the first Americans met early violent deaths right here in Pearl Harbor. Isolationism, he said, flew escort for the very bombers that attacked our men 50 years ago. See, it was the isolationists who killed them, not the Japanese that he was sucking up to at the time. And again, I don't blame those Japanese 50 years later for what happened. It was a completely different system of government. I don't have any grief, axe to grind with Japanese people about that. But it was the Japanese government at the time that did it. It wasn't Americans who were following the principles that America was established on. And that is, we don't go abroad seeking monsters to destroy. We had already done that in World War I. And as I pointed out on Wednesday, Winston Churchill in 1936, even before Hitler started taking over countries, I think that was even before the Anschluss, where he went into Austria and so forth, but certainly before World War II started, when he invaded Poland on the 2nd of September 1929. Right after, you had the prime minister come back and say, we have peace in our time, Neville Chamberlain. But nevertheless, Winston Churchill, who knew better, said if you Americans had not gotten involved in 1917, he said if you Americans had not gotten involved, the war would have ended in 1917. We wouldn't have had a manufactured Russian Revolution manufactured by the Germans, the German bankers who sent Lenin into Russia with $10 million of gold out of Switzerland in a sealed train to start that Russian Revolution. So we wouldn't have had Russia turn communist. We wouldn't have had in the aftermath of World War I the punitive measures taken against Germany. They would have been in a stronger position. They wouldn't have rubbed their noses into it to the extent that they destroyed them and invited the creation of the Nazi Party. And he said we wouldn't have even had fascism in Italy. But you prolonged the war, and you created the communists in Russia, the Nazis in Germany, and the fascists in Italy. That's the result of your foreign policy. And we've been doing that type of thing ever since 1945. We have decided in our wisdom that we are going to interject ourselves in every conflict in the globe, and it always has negative, unintended, adverse consequences for us and for everybody else. But George Bush, on the 50th anniversary, was saying otherwise. He was blaming those American firsters. As I said at the top of the hour, my father was a little bit older than George Bush. He was already married. And the day after Pearl Harbor, like a lot of Americans, he signed up. My mother did everything she could to stop it. A lot of people died. He didn't. Yeah, actually, his story It's kind of like the character, if you ever saw Black Hawk Down, the character is played by Ewan McGregor. He goes to fight with these guys, and they find out he can type, and they took him out of the fight. He was upset about it. So was my dad. He could type pretty fast. He only used 2 fingers, but he was really fast with those 2 fingers. That they took him out. They needed somebody who could type, so that saved his life. Actually, his life was saved by a typewriter. But still, that was the spirit of America. That was the same spirit of those people that George Bush denigrated as America first, isolationist and protectionist. And of course, he combines protectionism there because as a globalist, he was pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He was somebody who was going to push through the North American Union. He didn't win re-election, and yet we spent this last week worshiping this guy that we threw out of office 26 years ago because he lied to us about tax increases. Not because he didn't know what a barcode scanner was. What a bunch of nonsense that is. And so he's pushing all this garbage. And so here's where we are now, 50 years later. I'm sorry, not 50 years later, 77 years later. And 27 years after he gave that speech. We got a U.S. military flying planes over the Ukraine and a provocation to Russia because we haven't learned our lesson yet. We are the ones who start wars. We are the ones who overthrow regimes. We are the ones who invade and bomb countries preemptively now. We are the empire. After the Soviet Union has fallen, it is now our empire that is out there. And one last thing to say about the George Bush funerals, multiple funerals and ceremonies. One article out of the Sun. Body language expert says that Trump's arrival at George H.W. Bush's funeral was like a lion startling a herd of animals. Trump was like a lion startling a herd of animals when he arrived at George H.W. Bush's funeral, says a body language expert. She added, Bill Clinton had been leaning into Michelle Obama, resting his hand on her arm as he chatted, and Hillary had leaned across her husband to chat with Barack. Hillary and Michelle had been emphatically tactile and friendly before they took their seats, and Hillary placing one splayed hand over her heart as she spoke, and 2 women standing with their arms round one another at one point. But when Trump arrived, they all stiffened up. She said they looked as stiff as Mount Rushmore. Except none of them are ever going to be on Mount Rushmore. Barack's chin went up and his mouth clamped shut. Michelle sat rigid beside him while Bill turned to Hillary and rubbed her arm fondly in what looked like a gesture of affection and reassurance. And quite frankly, if you look at those pictures of Hillary Clinton and how she was looking straight forward, I mean, she did look like somebody who was trying to avoid a predator. Or as I remember Nigel Farage said that in the debate in Vegas, the final debate, that Trump dominated her like a silverbacked gorilla. And she looked like somebody who was trying to not move and not be seen by the silverbacked gorilla that was 4 seats over from her at that particular event. All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about the Paris Climate Accord. It is, and some hypocrisy again by Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, the guy who says that he wished that he could go back in time and undo fossil fuel. I should say he is the actor Fossil who wants to do that. But Macron is going to be doubling down. There's going to be a lot of fireworks tomorrow, and it's going to be pretty amazing to see what happens as both sides are still escalating. And Macron's popularity is plummeting. He is now calling out the army, quite frankly. He said, it's just police and riot troops. Folks, they are as heavily equipped as most armies in history. And he's calling out 89,000 of them across France. Only 8,000 in Paris. I mean, it's quite a few in Paris, isn't it? But to give you an idea of the fact that this is not just in Paris, it's across the entire country. That's where the other 80,000 are going to be across the rest of the country. They had more than 2,000 spots the very first day that they protested. We'll be right back.
please, whatever you do, realize that we're all getting punch drunk to the censorship. And you saw 18 Twitter accounts, they say affiliated with InfoWars. Yeah, some of them were like little side accounts. I didn't even know we had, like InfoWars Store that just showed our products. But they just banned them all yesterday in punishment that I be at a Trump rally and be mobbed by all these folks that loved us. Your excitement about America, your excitement about this broadcast is what brought the country and the world back from the brink. But the globalists now want to target where the resistance came from so that we're not pesky in the future. I want to be troublesome and pesky.
I want to talk about the gig economy going too far. Earlier this week, former Packers quarterback Brett Favre was found in the news for all the wrong reasons. As part of his participation in an app called Cameo, where celebrities can be paid nominal fees by users to record personalized video messages, Favre ended up accidentally delivering a disturbing message full of anti-Semitic references and terms. Favre, who through football alone has made $150 million, did this for the contextually low price of $500. And he's not the first celebrity it's happened to either. It's almost as if offering the ability to say something, almost anything, on camera for a nominal fee through a dubiously regulated website is a bad idea. I know the intention is for celebs to record nice birthday messages or surprise a fan, but come on. We all know what the internet is like. I get it. Times are tough, but let's try to avoid a world where everyone is that guy in high school who would do almost anything for $5. Oh, what's that? There's an app for that already? Unbelievable. And that's the minute. I'm Dennis. If you or a loved one struggles with leg or foot cramps, you've got to try TheraWorks Relief. This non-greasy foam is proven to relieve muscle cramps fast. And with daily use, TheraWorks Relief can even prevent muscle cramps, so you can get a full night's sleep or do activities you love without worry. TheraWorks Relief only takes minutes to apply, absorbs quickly, and it works. TheraWorks Relief is my choice for preventing and relieving muscle cramps.
Saying we have the U.S. military flying planes around the Ukraine in a provocative move. But there's other signs that you have the U.S. military-industrial complex itching to get a war started between the U.S. and Russia. Besides the censorship. that, folks, is really coming, and the liberals need to understand this, just like the conservatives need to understand that the war on drugs is coming from a UN agenda. These liberals who are out there applauding all of these abuses of our free speech, just as the conservatives. The forever war establishment, the never Trumpers, the neocon people, the people who are spying on us unconstitutionally and illegally. You question any of that stuff. You question the CIA. You question the military-industrial complex, NATO. You're the one, left or right, that they want to censor. And so as they're trying to push a war, get it started in the Ukraine, this came out at the beginning of the week. U.S. defense contractor posts a job offering for, quote, a classified contingency operations in the Ukraine. And as they say on Zero Hedge, the geopolitical analysis site Southfront has unearthed from the pages of LinkedIn an incredible public job offering by a U.S. defense contractor, which reveals potentially sensitive information. The job posting mentions, quote, classified contingency operations in Ukraine, and was posted 15 days ago, just prior to the incident between Russian and Ukrainian navies in the Kerch Strait. Again, that was a provocation, if you look at the timeline of what happened, and if you look at the videos, which you will not see in the mainstream press here in the West. It went on for 4.5 hours before what they did was they sent two, I went through this in